How do you discover a universe that's been hiding right under your nose? A universe teeming with life, not out in the stars, but inside a single drop of water. You don't just find it. You have to build a window to see it. And that window started as nothing more than sand. This is the story of how we taught sand to see. And it all begins right here. Delft, autumn, 1674. In a small room, a man warms a piece of brass in his hand. Trapped between two plates is a single, tiny bead of glass, polished like a captured tear. He lifts a pin tipped with murky canal water. You can almost smell the peat and tar, the faint rot of reeds, and he studies the tremor in his fingers. He turns two tiny screws, nudging the focus forward. The bead of glass squeezes the light into a razor's edge. And in that instant, the droplet explodes into life. There are tails lashing, swirling vortexes of green, an entire bestiary thriving inside a thimble. For the very first time, a human sees that his world is inhabited by entire nations he never knew he carried. So, what unbelievable chain of hands taught simple sand to see? And when we finally saw, what did that do to our very idea of being human? To unravel this, you have to start with the matter itself. What is glass? Imagine a liquid, like molten sand, frozen in a state of permanent panic. The silica has been coaxed by fire and flux past its stubborn need to become a crystal. It's trapped perfectly between liquid and solid. For centuries, along the Mediterranean, the secret ingredient was natron, a kind of natural salt from dried lake beds. But go north and the recipe changes completely. There, craftsmen discovered they could marry wood ash and sand under bellow-fed fires to create potash lime glass. They learned to control its color. A pinch of manganese dioxide could bleach out the green tint from iron impurities. But add too much? The whole melt would turn a royal amethyst. But making perfect glass? That was a war against flaws. They called them optical crimes, seeds, striae, and stones. Tiny bubbles of trapped air, streaks from uneven mixing and unmelted grit. Each one was a criminal that would tilt the truth by bending and dirtying the ray of light. So how do you fight these crimes? You impose discipline. On the island of Murano, in the 15th century, glassmakers created cristallo. It was radically clearer. Why? Because they used pure sand, watched their furnaces like newborns, and wrote their batch books in secret code. And when the glass came out of the furnace, it entered the lair, the annealing oven. This part taught patience. If you rushed the cooling, the lens would remember the stress in its very structure, creating a warp that no amount of polishing could ever confess. Then, with this clearer, more patient glass, the sky opens up. It's 1608. In the Dutch Republic, spectacle makers start cobbling lenses together into spyglasses. Just 1 year later, a Pisan mathematician named Galileo grinds a better set, points his tube at Jupiter, and prints what he sees in a book called Sidereus Nuncius. What did he see? For tiny moons, filing past the giant planet like witnesses in a trial against the idea that everything revolved around the Earth. Sure, the glass wasn't perfect. It smeared color, leaving purple and green fringes around bright objects. But that didn't matter. The claim was repeatable. Anyone with a clear night and a tube could see it for themselves. The truth was out. Fast forward to 1665. A London virtuoso named Robert Hooke prints Micrographia. Using a compound microscope, he reveals the honeycomb structure of cork. He gives it a name, taking its first breath in science, the cell. Back in Delft, however, a man named Leeuwenhoek refused all this complication. He wanted pure clarity. He built single-lens microscopes with tiny bead lenses, with focal lengths the size of a flea's leap, pushing vision to 200, even 300 times its normal power. Why was this better? Fewer surfaces for light to cross meant less scattered light. More signal, less noise. And the things he saw. He writes to the Royal Society in London, describing animalcules in puddles in the plaque from his own teeth. He described bacteria, protozoa, even human seed. The invisible world had been breached. The craft now turned to taming the flaws themselves, color and curvature. In the 1750s, an English lawyer named Chester Moore Hall had a genius idea. He mated two different types of glass, crown and flint. Flint glass is rich in lead, which makes it bend light more aggressively. The result? A lens that could bend light without tearing it apart into rainbows. By 1758, John Dollond patents this achromatic doublet. Essentially, two optical sins canceled each other out, and the annoying color spread mostly died right there at the lens. Even the art of polishing matured. They switched from coarse emery to a fine, red powder, iron oxide rouge. They used pitch laps, blocks of pitch that would slowly take the exact curve of the lens, stroking away errors in the glass surface until the image finally stopped writhing and stood still. Now, with this perfected glass, we could do more than just see. We could read chemistry. In 1814, Fraunhofer uses a prism to map dark lines carved into the sun's spectrum, a barcode for the elements burning in its heart. Think about that. By 1868, the element helium is discovered in the sun, before it was ever found on Earth. Astronomy was using glass to indict our terrestrial ignorance. Biology began to speak the same language. In the 1830s, Schleiden and Schwann established the cell as the basic unit of all life. Then in 1855, Virchow famously declares that all cells come from other cells. Louis Pasteur even uses the shape of glass to prove it. He bends flasks into a swan neck shape. Microbes from the air would fall in, but gravity would trap them in the S-curve, unable to climb up and reach the sterile broth. He used simple geometry to strangle the ancient idea of spontaneous generation. And then, industry puts this entire feedback loop on steroids. In the 1880s, in Jena, Germany, Otto Schott and Ernst Abbe start cooking up entirely new families of glass. Borosilicates that could shrug off intense heat. Barium crowns that let them dial in the exact optical properties they needed. They were composing with glass the way a musician composes with notes. This led to apochromatic objectives that could tame color at 3 different wavelengths. Oil immersion lenses that allowed light to slip from the specimen into the glass as if it were crossing a smooth floor instead of leaping off a cliff. Guild secrets were replaced by catalogs full of hard data, refractive index ND, Abbe number VD. The great wager was finally being made. If we can standardize transparency, can we standardize truth itself? The reach of glass becomes planetary. Corning pours giant mirrors from low-expansion borosilicate glass for telescopes. Glass ceramics are invented that hold their shapes so perfectly they can cradle starlight without flinching. In 1970, loss in fiber optic cable drops below 20 decibels per kilometer, making it practical to braid light through hair-thin glass across entire oceans. And in 2007, a process called ion exchange starts stuffing big potassium atoms into the space meant for tiny sodium atoms in aluminosilicate glass. The result is a compressive skin we now swipe and tap all day long on our phones. The pattern is nakedly clear. We didn't just invent a new way of seeing. We manufactured it, piece by piece. We learned that fear, the fear that our worldview is just a smear of our own defects, can be disciplined with better tools. We learned that hope, the hope that nature will confess its secrets under careful light, has to be earned. And we learned that innovation is a loop. Better glass lets us ask better questions, and better questions demand ever better glass. The intimacy of it all is the point. A furnace worker schemes scum from a melt in the 15th century. And, because of him, a doctor today can watch a white blood cell hunt a bacterium on a slide. A craftsman kisses a lens with a pitch lap. And an astronomer can split a distant star into a breathtaking double. The smallest corrections enable the largest admissions. And that ghost, the spirit of that first invention, is still with us. Your waking and sleeping hours are bracketed by glass you forget to even see. The compressive aluminosilicate in your hand. The stack of tiny crown and flint lenses in your camera. The fused silica fibers ferrying this very sentence to you at the speed of light. Hospitals breathe through borosilicate, beakers, capillaries, and the cover slips that can decide if a cell is malignant. Astronomers bend time itself off glass ceramic mirrors. Every argument we have about reality still hinges on good optical housekeeping, on calibration, aberration, and signal-to-noise. Deepfakes are just today's chromatic fringes. And we answer them not with panic, but with better optics, better sensors, and better standards. We live inside a massive cathedral of engineered transparency, whose windows are also our finest instruments. So let's return to Delft, to that tiny bead of glass that made a universe fit on a pin. In its perfect curve, we find the method, humble materials, disciplined heat, and an absolute refusal to accept the haze. We taught sand to see, and in doing so, it made witnesses of us all. The verdict is this: clarity is not a gift, it is a craft. And the mirror to our present is that in a world fogged by noise, our honesty rises or falls with our willingness to measure, to standardize, to polish the lens before we judge the image. The investigation never ends. If this journey into the secret life of glass sparked your curiosity, then you have to see the story we uncovered waiting right here. It's on the screen now. Click it, and let's keep digging. And before you go, that question from Delft still echoes. If you had to choose one instrument to see the world anew, would it be the telescope, to understand our place in the vast cosmos, or the microscope, to understand the hidden universe within ourselves? Let me know in the comments. Just type telescope or microscope. We unearth forgotten histories like this every single day. To join the investigation, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what we find next.